In 2025, Anthropic and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation announced a partnership worth $200 million over 4 years. That number alone would make it news. But the money is not the story. The story is what they plan to do with it. Gates Foundation is not buying equity in Anthropic. It is not funding AI research for its own sake. The agreement is something more specific. Claude, Anthropic's AI model, will become the operational infrastructure for some of the most ambitious global health and development work happening anywhere on Earth. Disease prediction, drug discovery, vaccine candidate screening, health data analysis across populations in dozens of developing countries. If it works, it will not just change how global health organizations operate. It could change outcomes for millions of people who have never heard of Anthropic and never will. To understand why this partnership matters, you need to understand what the Gates Foundation actually does, because it is not a typical charity. Since its founding in 2000, the Gates Foundation has spent over $70 billion on global health and development. It is the largest private philanthropic organization in the world. Its work has contributed to a 99% reduction in polio cases globally. It has funded vaccine programs that have reached over 1 billion children. It has been one of the primary funders of malaria research for 2 decades. The foundation operates at a scale that most governments cannot match. It has deep relationships with health ministries, research institutions, and frontline health workers in over 130 countries. And crucially, it has data. Decades of data on disease patterns, treatment outcomes, vaccination rates, maternal health, agricultural productivity, and economic indicators across the developing world. That data has always been valuable. The problem has been knowing what to do with all of it. Here is the challenge that has defined global health research for a generation. The Gates Foundation and its partners have collected an extraordinary volume of data. Longitudinal health records from sub-Saharan Africa, vaccination coverage maps across South Asia, agricultural yield patterns correlated with child nutrition outcomes, disease surveillance data from dozens of countries that most pharmaceutical companies do not have commercial incentive to study. But data without the ability to analyze it at scale is not answers, it is storage. Traditional research methods are slow. Clinical trials take years. Identifying promising drug candidates from large datasets requires computational resources and expertise that most global health organizations do not have in-house. AI does not solve every part of this problem, but it addresses one of the most significant bottlenecks, the gap between having the data and being able to extract actionable insight from it at speed. That is where Claude comes in. The agreement between Anthropic and Gates Foundation is structured around specific use cases, and they are worth being precise about. Disease prediction means using historical health and environmental data to identify where outbreaks are likely to emerge before they do, giving health workers the ability to preposition resources and interventions rather than respond after the fact. The agreement between Anthropic and Gates Foundation is structured around specific use cases, and they are worth being precise about. Drug discovery means analyzing molecular data and existing research literature to identify compounds that might be effective against diseases that have historically received limited pharmaceutical attention, because the populations most affected by them cannot pay the prices that make drug development commercially viable. The agreement between Anthropic and Gates Foundation is structured around specific use cases, and they are worth being precise about. Vaccine candidate screening means accelerating the process of identifying which proteins and molecular structures are most promising for vaccine development, a process that currently takes years and enormous resources, and that AI can assist by processing biological data at a scale no human research team can match. The agreement between Anthropic and Gates Foundation is structured around specific use cases, and they are worth being precise about. Health data analysis means giving Gates Foundation program officers, researchers, and local health ministry partners the ability to ask complex questions about large datasets in natural language, without requiring specialized data science expertise to do it. The agreement between Anthropic and Gates Foundation is structured around specific use cases, and they are worth being precise about. Each of these is a real problem. None of them have simple solutions. But each of them is exactly the kind of problem where AI assistance, if applied carefully, can compress timelines and surface insights that would otherwise take much longer to find. The Gates Foundation's health priorities are specific, and understanding them makes the partnership concrete. Polio. Despite being vaccine preventable, polio still exists in parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and the logistical challenge of reaching every child in conflict zones and remote areas remains genuinely hard. Predictive modeling of transmission routes and identifying under-vaccinated populations is exactly the kind of pattern recognition problem where AI can contribute. HPV. Human papillomavirus is the leading cause of cervical cancer, which kills over 300,000 women per year, almost all of them in low- and middle-income countries where screening infrastructure is limited. Early detection, screening optimization, and vaccine distribution planning all involve data analysis at scale. Malaria. Despite decades of effort, malaria still kills over 600,000 people per year, the majority of them children under 5 in sub-Saharan Africa. Drug resistance is a growing problem. Identifying new treatment compounds and understanding resistance patterns requires processing enormous amounts of molecular and epidemiological data. These are not abstract research problems. They are specific, documented causes of death that have resisted solution not because of lack of effort, but because the problems are genuinely complex and the resources have never matched the scale. It is worth being honest about the history here. AI in healthcare has been promised for a decade. IBM's Watson was going to revolutionize cancer treatment. Dozens of AI diagnostic startups have raised hundreds of millions of dollars with compelling demonstrations that have not translated into clinical impact at scale. The gap between what AI can do in controlled research conditions and what it can do in resource-constrained real-world health systems is real. What is different about this partnership, if the difference holds, is the combination of 3 things that previous AI health initiatives have lacked. First, the data. Gates Foundation's datasets are among the most comprehensive global health datasets in existence, collected over decades with consistent methodology. Most AI health initiatives have struggled because the underlying data is fragmented, inconsistent, or inaccessible. Second, the operational infrastructure. Gates Foundation is not a research organization publishing papers. It has direct relationships with health ministries, field workers, and implementation partners in the countries where the data was collected and where interventions actually happen. Third, the specificity. The partnership is not attempting to solve all of global health. It is focused on specific use cases, disease prediction, drug discovery, vaccine screening, where the AI application is concrete and the success criteria can be defined. Whether these differences are sufficient to produce outcomes that previous AI health initiatives did not is an open question, but the structure of the partnership is more credible than most. Step back and consider what this represents beyond the specific diseases and dollar figures. The standard model of pharmaceutical development is organized around commercial returns. Drugs get developed for diseases that affect populations that can pay for treatment. Diseases that disproportionately affect poor populations in developing countries receive a fraction of the research investment their disease burden would warrant. This is not a failure of individual companies or researchers. It is a structural feature of how pharmaceutical development is financed globally. And it has resulted in decades of neglect for diseases that kill millions of people every year. What Anthropic and the Gates Foundation are attempting, in part, is to use AI to reduce the cost of drug discovery and disease research to the point where it becomes feasible to work on problems that the commercial market would not otherwise fund. And it has resulted in decades of neglect for diseases that kill millions of people every year. If AI can compress a 5-year drug discovery process into 18 months and do it at a fraction of the cost, the economics of working on neglected diseases begin to change. Not because the diseases become profitable, but because the barrier to investigating them drops far enough that philanthropic funding can cover it. That is the bet embedded in this partnership. It is ambitious. The track record of similar bets is mixed, but the logic is sound and the resources behind it are serious. $200 million, 4 years. The world's most capable AI model applied to some of the most persistent health crises in human history. Whether this works is genuinely uncertain. The diseases targeted by this partnership have resisted solution for decades, and AI is not a guaranteed accelerant. But the partnership is structured around specific, tractable problems rather than vague aspirations. The data is real, the infrastructure is real, and the need is not in question. What Anthropic and the Gates Foundation are attempting is a test of something important, whether AI can be useful not just for the technology industry, but for the problems that matter most to the largest number of people. The data is real, the infrastructure is real, and the need is not in question. That test is worth watching. This is Orbital Brief. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe. We cover the technology stories that actually matter every week. No hype, just depth.